This is the Post Shift Podcast, a raw look at the hospitality industry. What's happening, everybody? I'm glad. I'm 1 minute late. I'm sorry about that. I had to do a quick interview for CFAX just before this came on, so I'm just waiting to see to get Trevor to come on board. And once he comes on board, let me see. There we go. That's who I'm looking. Hey, Carmen, how are you? There we go. And there we go.
How you doing, man?
How are you, sir?
Yeah, you know, as good as we can be right now, but pretty good.
Yeah, you keeping busy?
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's hard running a failing business, you know?
Are you sort of getting close to a break-even point, or is it just every day you just trying to turn the wheels a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we switched over to a takeout concept, and yeah, it's like, you know, you drop 92% in revenue, and then what do you do? And then, you know, your overhead costs in Vancouver aren't cheap, and then you have tons of conversations to have with your banks, your landlords, your lenders, your everything to try to stay afloat, and it's a hard go, man. No question.
So we're gonna get into it, but for everybody sort of tuning in, do you want to introduce yourself, give yourself some background, the restaurants that you own, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so my name is Trevor Bird from Vancouver, BC. I own Fable restaurant in Kitsilano, co-founder of meetme.ca. I opened Fable Diner and I sold all my shares in Fable Diner, and now I'm doing my best to navigate this whole new landscape that we're in.
So when this first happened, what was the sort of response you had with all your management before even staff layoffs and stuff like that? What was the sort of how was the conversation, the awkward conversation about what the hell's going to happen?
You know, it wasn't that bad. It was actually pretty good. It was there's a lot of uncertainty, but I feel like I have a lot of good tools to get through the anxious times and everything. And you know, it was a very candid conversation. Sorry, I should say explicit conversation with my staff of like, look, this is the landscape we're entering. This is what it's going to look like, and these are the possibilities that's going to happen. I'm going to keep you guys updated, you know, twice a day, and we're going to see what happens. And we've been working on, you know, day-to-day basis to keep up with the amount of things that are changing.
How many staff did you have to lay off?
30.
It's still a chunk of numbers. So how many staff have you kept on?
3.
Wow. So you're just focusing your takeout model from one restaurant?
Yeah.
Yeah? Which restaurant's that? Give it a plug.
Fable.
Fable?
Fable, yeah. In Kitsilano.
And how, like, I just got off a conversation with people who aren't technically in the industry, and it's surprising to me, the macro outside our industry, how, I won't say ignorant's a bad word, but how out of touch they actually understand, because a lot of them are like, oh, you can do takeout and delivery now, you're gonna survive.
Not the case.
Let's talk about the realities of actual takeout.
Yeah. First, it's a headache. It's not like you build your business model to do one thing, and then takeout's a whole different monster. And if you don't have the whole system set up, I mean, setting up your back end, setting up, you know, how are you going to take payment, integrating your payment into your website. And if you don't have tech, if you're not tech savvy like myself, and you rely on a bunch of teams to do it, it becomes quite cumbersome, and it's hard to set up. And we're still working through God knows what. I mean, I just found out today we're not collecting taxes on our online payments. Awesome. You know, just like so much, there's just like hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. And I mean, the whole restaurant industry is always that, but I mean, we're essentially starting a new business model and a new business plan, and some people are going to crush it and some people are going to struggle. And right now, not going to lie, we're struggling. It's not crushing it. But if you can make it work, and you can do like $1,000 or $2,000 a day in sales, like it's a successful new business model and a new outlet for a place. So, you know, we have our goals set of what we want to get to, and how we're going to get there, I have no idea, because this is so far out of any of our control. There's not much that we can do except for put our best foot forward, you know, try to make the best educated decisions of where we're spending our money in terms of advertising, and that's about it.
Have you partnered up with one of the delivery services?
No, taking 20% off the top. Like my meals are for the people that can't eat. Like I charge $5 to $10 for a for the food, and yeah, like for them to take 30% off the top of that, like I'm already dying. Why would I, like, that doesn't make any sense.
It's been the one thing from the industry that I've been very curious about, because I haven't heard a lot of guff about it, that that the industry, like BCRFA or like some of the industry people, haven't been putting pressure on the Skip the Dishes and the DoorDash to drop their fees. Because from what I know, they haven't they haven't changed their business model at all. They just picked up more restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's what they do. I mean, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't work for my business model just because I'm already charging so cheap. I'm trying to get through the inventory in my fridges, and that, like, it's not a money making thing. It's like, hey, let's try to keep some people out of the EI system, and let's try to make a go of this. And if it doesn't work, then if everything falls apart, it's like, at least we can say we tried really damn hard.
Have you been keeping in touch with a lot of other restaurant brethren about like how they're sort of dealing with this pivot? Because Fable never did takeout. Takeout's a brand spanking new thing for you, right?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of restaurants in Vancouver that never did takeout sort of all of a sudden have to like pivot and do it. What is the general consensus between the restaurant scene with takeout, and how are people really navigating the changed landscape?
Yeah, like I stay in touch with somebody every day to multiple restaurants a week. So yeah, some people are, like I said, some people are like haven't figured out, and I don't, my personal things. I don't want to charge too much money for takeout because I don't know how to do that, and I don't think you should do that right now. I mean, everybody's being laid off. Nobody has extra money to spend. Like, I'm just trying to get food into people's mouths more than anything. But I mean, some people are crushing it. Like Say Mercy has an amazing system set up, and their sales are doing amazing. Like, they should start a whole separate business doing that. They're doing so well. So, but they're one restaurant out of I don't know how many. Like I mean, I'm sure like Nightingale's doing pretty good as well. But I mean, when you go from $125,000 days to $3,000 a day, which would make me work, but it does not make a restaurant of that scale work. Yeah. So it's all relative, right?
Now that April 1st is sort of pushed past yesterday, I had a few conversations with like John Sinopoli from Save Hospitality yesterday, and talking about rent and taxes and all this sort of stuff. How is that on a personal business level for yourself? There's conversations with landlords and tax accountants and stuff.
So, I mean, I'll talk to it personally and what I'm doing and going through, and hopefully this can kind of teach other people like how to have those conversations. Is, hopefully you have a good relationship with your landlord and you have good communication with him. If you don't, you're in a really bad position because he's not going to want to do anything to help you. Mm-hmm. So, investing in your relationships right now is so important, and your community. And, I have a 50% deferral on my rent. So, I pay 50% now, 50% when I can afford it, if that ever happens. Based on our current market, it's damn hard. And just before I jumped on this, he gave me a call. So I'm going to jump on the call with him again because I sent him an email today based on the Prime Minister yesterday saying, the earliest we can expect to get back to normal, is July 1st. And that is just like, I don't know. I cannot pay full rent until July 1st and be okay. So, being confident in that conversation, not getting emotionally reactive to it, but stating facts objectively as possible, where it's like, look, I want to be here. You need rent. How are we going to create a win-win situation out of this? If you expect me to pay full amount of rent from now until July, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So what do you suggest we do? Because if you kick me out right now, that's okay. But how are you going to replace me? Like we're nobody really has an upper hand here. Yeah. I mean, landlords start evicting them and nobody's coming in to replace anybody. And if we don't have a business, then we can't run anything. So, I mean, it's a very tough game of back and forth right now. And I think that in my communication and my relationships, I try to be as open and vulnerable and honest as possible, because I don't think that we should be trying to pull the shade over somebody else's eyes to succeed right now. Like, we got to approach this with as much love and compassion as we possibly can.
Have you talking about emotions and that sort of thing? Have you found it difficult? Because I always find hospitality people in general, we're emotional people. We're very passionate. Restaurants aren't just a business to a lot of us. Restaurants, like, it's a piece of us. It's a child, a limb. Have you found it difficult? Have you got some sort of techniques? Because I've seen a lot of operators get very emotional on social media about landlords and that sort of thing. And your point is exactly right. Like, a landlord squeezing a tenant, you're just going to have a space empty for a year and a half. So there's got to be a little give and take. But how have you dealt with trying to focus on that business mindset over, like, just being an emotional dick? Like,
well, first thing I'm gonna say to that is I am by no means perfect at it, and I do a lot of exercises around it, and I practice it pretty heavily within my life and try to integrate it into my life. But that being said, what I would say is like have a good routine of your self needs right now. Like, what of your needs of what do you need to be happy right now, and that should be your priority in life. The second that you stop listening to your needs or stop honoring yourself right now, lying, it's going to take you down a bad path. I mean, I'm not telling people how to be or live, but I think that consuming too much alcohol right now is probably not the best idea. Like, it's the king of avoidance behavior. And for myself, I suffer from like pretty bad anxiety at some points, and I quit drinking because of that. And I don't think that it doesn't help you at all, So stay sober, stay clear-headed. For myself, I have my morning routine, which is like, without that, I that starts my day off on the best possible place that I can, which involves meditation, physical activity, and breath work. And try to know that everybody's in this together and everybody's hurting. And it's like, if somebody is angry or upset at what is going on, it's because they have their pain right now. It has nothing to do with you. Their emotions are their emotions, and the best we can do is try to understand them.
Have you reached out to a lot of your other your fixed costs, your landlords, obviously one of them, credit card companies also? So have you reached out to everybody and sort of said, hey, what can you do for me, or how can we find a middle ground where everybody's winning, to try and cut down that? Because I find a lot of operators that I've talked to, they're like, oh, well, they're just going to say no. And I'm like, yeah, you just never know what they're going to say. The credit card company may say bugger off, but the credit card company may say, you know what, I'll defer that for 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely. With everybody that I've been talking to right now, I mean, if you think you can save money anywhere, like, what's the harm in asking right now? Like, you might be pleasantly surprised at what's going on. You might be pleasantly surprised at what people are going to come back at you with. Like, I know all my major expenses. I've reached out to banks. I've reached out to, credit card companies unsuccessfully, because they're like, oh yeah, we'll get you on the phone. And then it's like blank for 2 hours. And you're like, okay, cool, man. But I mean, there's no harm in starting the conversation with anybody and just telling them, again, objectively, what is going on for you. It's like, look, I want to pay you. I wish I could pay you, but I cannot right now. What are we going to do about this? They can, that's up to them to if they freak out over that, then it's like, okay, well.
Do you think that the government, the federal government, the provincial government, the stuff the money that they're sending down the pipeline for the hospitality industry, especially operators, do you think it's enough?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I'm so damn thankful to be living in this country. I've seen a lot of the two ends of the spectrum here. I've seen people being like, oh, they're not doing enough, and we need to be given handouts and bailouts. It's like, a bailout is a fucking loan. Like, yeah. That's what it is. And you know what? Like, I feel like a lot of people in our industry are so fused with how we've built our business that we can't let it go. And right now, it is a transitional period in history for industry, period, whatever business you're in. And we need to change with these times or get eaten. And our margins already suck. And, kicking the can down the road is not going to help. But I mean, at the end of the day, we did it to ourselves. However that happened, this is like a full industry issue that we we like manifested into this terrible situation right now. And the government is doing a shit ton for small business, and they're doing the best that they possibly can. And I make the analogy of like right now, the federal and provincial governments are like on a Saturday night service, you're down 5 cooks out of 10. You have 3 servers down and no dishwasher because he's sick from COVID. Like, what do you expect from a service like that? Obviously, it's going to be damn hard. Obviously, shit's going to fall behind. It's like, it's not fast enough. It's not fast enough. It's like, I'm sure we can all relate to this. It's the worst service of your life is happening to our government right now. So, you got to keep a straight head on and understand that I am beyond grateful for the accessibility that they have offered to us. Like, I've applied for BDC loans and they're just like, yep. Like, there's no holdback. EI, you're getting minimal pushback to get accepted. So, I mean, you look at other places like Mexico and they're like, figure it out, not us.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we should be counting our blessings right now for what they're offering us and what we have. And I think that what they're doing is amazing. And, it's up to us to figure out how to manage our businesses, and up to us how to figure it, because they can't fix it for us. Nobody can fix it for us except for us.
Do you think that I've talked to a couple of people about this, do you think the government has started to understand just how voluminous and how big the hospitality industry is in Canada, and just how affected something like this creates in the hospitality industry? Because I always feel the hospitality industry, even in the tourism ecosystem, is always sort of seen as like the redheaded stepchild, like with all the transient workers we have and that sort of thing. Do you feel like the government's like, oh shit, like the hospitality industry is legit and we're going to lose a shit ton of coin out of this if this doesn't recover?
Yeah, that's a pretty good conversation. My intuition says no. I don't think they care. I don't think that this is a priority for them. Like maybe I'm a little rigid in the way that I think, and I'd like to explore that a bit more. But I mean, like we're just going to have to adapt and change, and like to expect that our industry is going to go back to the way it was is not going to happen.
It's counterintuitive to think that. I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to go back. I think there's going to be a lot of cons. Obviously, restaurant closures are always horrible. I think a pro with less restaurants means we have a bigger talent pool if people come back to the hospitality industry. Yep. Chef shortages may go to the opposite way, where we have an excess of chefs.
Oh, we will.
Which will be fantastic. But I think, do you feel like, because you're a little bit different, because you've always been very, you wear your heart on your sleeve. You've always been very open with your mental health struggles and that sort of thing. Do you think there's a time now for the restaurant industries and owners as a whole to show a little bit more vulnerability and to lose the pride and the ego to a little degree, and really show our guests because the thing is, like, a lot of the stuff we're hearing and talking about, it's all in our little micro spheres of social media and stuff. It's friends talking to friends and that sort of thing, but really in the grand scheme of things, for our clientele and outside of our guests, do you think that the bravado needs to be lost, especially in this situation, to really shine light on the struggles of being a restaurateur, even in good times?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this whole thing really puts us on a level playing field, like we are, like, no matter if you're the best restaurant in Vancouver or you are a hole in the wall, you're both in the same spot right now. And we are all on the same playing field. And yeah, I mean, I think that, it takes a big shift like this for people to drop their mask that they wear of their toughness and of their their ego and everything. And it takes a really hard hit to actually transition away from that thought process of being stuck and identified as a hospitality worker or a chef or a bar manager, whatever it is. I feel like that's a big thing that our industry struggles with is our fusion to we define ourselves by what we do. And I don't think that's very healthy. And this is kind of a thing where we're getting our foundation shook right now. So, there's a lot of power in vulnerability, and a lot of power be saying like, hey man, I'm not okay right now, like I'm struggling. And we all are, whether whoever is saying they're not is lying.
What made you change your perspective on that?
Doing a lot of work on myself, seeing a therapist, breaking down my own limiting beliefs, my own identity. To like, I'm still very fused with being a chef, and I still have a hard time letting it go. And like that has guided a lot of my decisions in the past, and actually starting to look at it for what it is instead of being Trevor Bird the chef. I'm Trevor Bird the person that can run a restaurant, and kind of like separating myself from that has been very freeing and very healing.
Was it difficult?
Yeah.
So I think
10 out of 10.
How old are you this year?
37.
37. Like, I think there's a lot of chefs in their early 30s, especially with these shortages, and you have a pick up a crop, whichever restaurant you can go work at and stuff like that. The tie-in, and again, it goes back to that super passionate, this is what we do, this is who we are, this sort of mentality, which I don't think any other industry has. Like, my wife is an office manager for a law firm. She doesn't believe that defines her as a person. Which is, it's always great to have someone who accepts you for who you are and never tries to understand you. Because when I say I'm going to do more work, she's like, but why? Like, can't you just work 9 to 5 in a regular job? I'm like, no, I can't. But do you feel like, how do you feel chefs and bartenders and managers and sommeliers and all the people in the industry should go about like looking after their mental health? Because I know that I think I posted something about my mental health a little while ago, and you reached out to me like bluntly, like we've never met face to face. We've only talked on social media, and now we're having a live stream on Instagram. But what advice can you give to a chef who needs to make that transition out of that definition of who they are? Yeah.
First, I would say the biggest like arrow pointing to that, of like, hey, something might not be right here, is how at peace you feel with yourself. Like, are you drinking every day? Are you angry a lot? Do you have a lot of emotions? Like, I used to break down, like when I was, I just started to grow up at about when I was 32 years old. I started to learn how to become an adult and, be able to express my emotions and like tell somebody, hey, I'm angry, instead of yelling at them and not telling them that I'm angry. But it would just come out in like a rage of energy towards them. So I'd say, like, if you're feeling uncomfortable and you don't know, like I think that your post that you put on, I hope you don't mind me talking about it, because you did put it in social media world. It's like, you said that you had a hard time sitting still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I feel you, man, like this whole time right now where it's like, I can't be doing anything. It's like, when I'm in chaos, I'm thriving. Like when I have too much shit going on, this is like, that's my jam. I'm in it. But it's like sitting at home, like watching a movie, I feel so out of sorts. Mm-hmm. So it's like, when that anxiety comes up in you, like get curious about it, talk about it, put it on social media, connect with people about it, bring awareness to it, see a therapist is like that's for me has been the number one game changer. Talk to them about it. They have amazing insights into why you're feeling this way, past, environmental factors that kind of brought you into why you're like that. So find out what's holding you back. Like the question is like, you could journal on this if nobody has a journaling practice, but journaling is huge. It's answer the question of, where do you feel powerless?
For me, I've always been open, and it's taken me a long time to be open, because I feel in the social media realm, I'm sure you feel the same way, there's a certain perception of yourself out there with other people. They think you've got everything together and you're clued in and you're checked off and that. I'm like, well, no, yeah, I'm in Singapore for 4.5 months working, but I'm away from my family. I'm living this like basically a single man's life. It gets difficult and lonely. So I'm open because I want young bartenders to think, because a lot of young bartenders and a lot of young chefs, they want to be on Top Chef and they want to do all these things. And you're like, well, but you understand that that's a lot of stress and you're away from family, and, like traveling's great, but you're living in airports for 2.5 months.
The other thing is like don't live for other people. We put a lot of stuff, a lot of expectations on ourselves to be perceived a certain way in somebody else's eyes. Like, oh, you want to be the best restaurant in Vancouver, so you start doing all these moves to be perceived as the best restaurant in Vancouver. But like, is that truly what you want, or are you living for other people's expectations? And I think that that is a large piece that feeds a lot of chefs' egos is, you know, we thrive to put our value in how good our food is and how well it's perceived from other people. And they say, oh, this food is lovely, it's so good. And you're like, oh, thank God. Like you're putting your self-worth in external things. And I don't mean that, I don't want that to come across negatively, but it's just like you are searching to feel okay by making someone else happy. And that is not okay in my books. Like that should not be happening.
Well, it's difficult because when you start in the industry, you're trained to be a people pleaser. Like nothing that's on this side of you means diddly squat. You put a face on, you're on show, the theater of the restaurant, so on and so forth. All you're there is to please that person, and so you get internalize it really quickly into other people's affection and love is like your fuel and your gas.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And it's like, you know, if somebody sends the meal back, like a lot of chefs are like, oh, fuck that, like it's not wrong, you know, they're wrong, and they take it so personally. And it's like, man, like you got to like, yeah, it's a challenge, and it's a perfect breeding ground for codependency of putting your worth into external people and external things, where, you know, you get the inside right and the outside's going to fall into place. And right now we're in this industry, we put a lot of everything into everybody else.
So as an operator, and obviously we've just talked about mental health, how do you train and sort of mold your staff in the image that you're sort of portraying yourself? Like, I think sometimes a lot of operators, they get caught up in how they're doing and the stresses of just operating a restaurant, and the staff are sort of cogs in the machine. How do you make sure that your values are reflected in your staff on a weekly and monthly basis?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, again, like I'm not going to come at this like I have all the answers, but I feel like we have an amazing culture here at the restaurant. And I feel like the more open and vulnerable you are with them, it's, you know, that you attract the people that you want. And you figure out pretty quickly the people that aren't willing to do that kind of work. They generally, they act inauthentically. They'll piss somebody off. They won't be authentic about it. They'll lie about it. And then they just kind of get pushed out because we don't stand for that kind of stuff. Right. And however you run your business is kind of the environment that molds based on the people that get brought in. And if you are always pissed off and you're always angry, and then everybody's angry, and that's the okay standard, which I've seen in many restaurants, I mean, that's the kind of environment you breed, and then that's your culture. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way it is. And you're probably going to be a top performing restaurant with a very poor mentally health performing restaurant. But you're going to be perceived on the outside world of you're getting all these awards, you're winning all this stuff, and you're like, look at me. But like on the inside, you're probably hurting a lot, and that's why you're so angry all the time. But you know, just trying to be a good person and not putting up, setting your boundaries strong with the people that don't fit in with that, and that would create a culture that would trickle downwards.
So let's change the pace. A lot of people are saying that this is, like you said, July 1st. A lot of legislation that we're getting for takeout alcohol and stuff from the liquor board and stuff, saying July 15th on all the memos. 12 weeks is sort of the roundabout assumption right now. Have you sort of set into play a game plan for 12 weeks before you sort of reopen?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of just doing that right before we got on this call, and I'm like 1% done, so I can't answer that confidently. But what I do know is that we're already discussing what reopening is going to look like, because, you know, like I said, we're going to open up into a new landscape. I think it's going to take months and months before people are willing to go out. Mm-hmm. You know, it's going to be a slow ramp up. People aren't going to want to be in crowds and be in crowded restaurants. And there's going to be a lot of like, we're like traumatizing ourselves right now to be, and it not anybody's fault, but it's just like, we're like, I walk in the grocery store and I don't want anybody around me, you know, and we're going to be doing this for 3 months. So it's like, picture what's going to happen in another 3 months. And how that's going to affect like the way we interact with each other. Yeah, so we're looking at like what is our concept going to look like when we reopen, because having a giant menu and since we do have all this farm to table, farmer direct food, I mean, they need to rebuild their stocking supplies, like all of our livestock farmers, like they're producing so much, they have to go it down, and now it's going to take time for them to go back up as well. So it's gonna be an extreme amount of effort to kind of ramp back up. And yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. And I'm working on the financials to see what's going to happen there and see how long we can make this work for, and what's our best case, what's our worst case, what's our break even, what do we need to hit, and if we don't hit, what are we going to do, and blah blah blah.
So because you are a farm table restaurant, you're sort of plugged into the local producers. How are they doing? Like,
terrible. This is a trickle down effect, and we were one of the first front lines to be affected, but this is a complete rollover, and it's just going like, in 3 months, this is going to be in our banks, and we're going to start to see it. And what I'm really scared for, in a year's time from now is we're going back to the conversation of, yes, I think that the government is doing everything they possibly can. I'm so thankful to live here, but we're like, how are they going to recover $150 billion? Our taxes are going to get raised. They're going to put it on small business. Our margins already suck. And now we're going to have to eat this more cost to replenish what's going on now. Now, there's no way out of this. That needs to happen. So if we don't smarten up and think like, okay, the full service restaurant model is now being proven that is extremely broken. We need to fix this, whatever that looks like. Whether that's going to be takeout or ghost kitchen or, I don't have the answers, but I mean, we need to look at our business models harder now than we ever have before, because in 12 months time, like, we're going to start to close restaurants, and the people that get out. And then, as soon as they implement, like, I don't know if you noticed, but when they introduced the health tax in BC, like 30 restaurants closed down. Mm-hmm. And that was like $10,000 a year for like a pretty small business. So it's like they're going to have to introduce another tax. It's going to be another $10,000 a month, and that's going to take out more. And they're going to say, oh, we need another tax break. So it's going to like just snowball and snowball for the time coming, and that's what I'm really nervous for.
Do you think the consumer is going to? Do you think the consumer is going to be more educated in understanding? Because I know I've talked to people who aren't in the industry about raising food prices, and nine times out of 10, the funny thing is they're also proponents for a higher wage for hospitality workers. But then you say, well, you need to raise the food X amount of dollars per dish, and they're like, no, it's not going to be that much. It should be like 25 cents a dish. Like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Do you think consumers are going to be more educated after all this about the pitfalls? And I think it goes back to that vulnerability of restaurants and being more open and truthful. And if the government also portrays that sort of mentality of how the industry is broken, do you think consumers are going to be more educated in the whole process?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to give Todd a shout out there. Todd from the Mallard Cottage there, and he says that's an upside to fixing a broken model, and he's absolutely right. So there's a lot of strength here. Like, there definitely is. There's going to be new concepts born out of this that are amazing, and I think that on a positive side, sorry, I'm not really answering your question right now. We'll get back to it. But like, there is a lot of positives here where I think that a lot of the young guns coming up right now that have been priced out of the market, like, this is their time. Like, in 12 months, like, there's going to be vacant restaurant spots all over the place, and like, this is their time to jump in and like kind of reignite the torch that we're going to need to, for sure. Yeah, and by fixing a broken model, it's like, absolutely, we're going to need to raise our prices. We're going to need to, hopefully educate the consumer a bit more that like driving down our prices is not the answer, because when we do, this is what happens. So
you go. I had someone actually ask me the other day, I can't remember who actually asked me, about a co-op of restaurateurs in certain regions in Vancouver. I think it was an actual suggestion, coming together, like in Kitsilano. Let's use Kitsilano as a thing. It's like all restaurateurs getting together and going, listen, when we reopen, let's make sure that we're not trying to price gouge each other to try and compete, that we're all on the same level playing field. So when someone walks in a Cactus Club and the burger's X amount of dollars, which franchise price dichotomy against independents is always weird for me. Like, people are willing to pay the same amount of money at the keg for a half decent experience as they would at like Brasserie Le Cole in Victoria, which makes no sense at all for me. And then they complain Brasserie is expensive. But sort of that mentality where burger prices aren't all over the map, and like the steaks are all, so the sort of price wars that exist inside the restaurant industry sort of fizzle as much as possible when the reopen happens, so that everybody's on the same page.
That's awesome, man. Like, I don't know how to do that, but if there's a coalition started and there's like an industry, if we started like a giant Google Doc of like Canada restaurants, like what should we charge for our food, I'm in on that. Like, I think it'd be a great thing to launch, and you know, like start to set the new standard. But I mean, you know, yeah, but that all being said, the way that I plan on reopening the restaurant, this is just for me personally, nobody has to agree with this, and like I just want to start a conversation around, is like, people aren't going to have money to go out. Like, there's like, we're laying off a huge amount of our workforce right now, and it's just going to get worse over the next 3 months. So, you know, people going out spending $100 a head on food is like per person is not going to be a thing. So I'm looking at like how I can lower my cost and offer like $20 meals, because, you know, my clientele, like I'm going to say I'm more cooking for people than I am cooking for that person looking for an experience, especially after something like this. Like this, we're just trying to, you know, I've been watching, like, I don't like to get too caught into social media, but I mean, there's some absolutely heartbreaking stories out there right now. And at my restaurant, we're giving away meals to people in need, and it's being used. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I get emotional about this, but it's like imagine having to call your restaurant and be like, man, I can't eat.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And that's also another thing I've seen some pretty heartless things about the homeless issue, because the thing is that we're social distancing. So homeless shelters, they can't pack the homeless shelter as full as they were before. So the homeless problem has been pushed further out on the street, even more so. Like, I was talking to John yesterday from Safe Hospitality, and it's like, we're an industry of like transient workers who have like are notorious for mental health and substance misuse problems in the good times, let alone now when a lot have been laid off, a lot live paycheck to paycheck, and they can't. And it is an astonishing amount of people that need help. And everybody's like, well, hospitality workers will be fine, they got EI. And I'm like, yeah, but still, like, rent in Vancouver is fucking expensive. You know, like that, paying your rent and then staying with a roof over your house, roof over your head, over like feeding yourself, is a very real thing right now.
This is going to be a big reset for our economy. You know, like, we're pushing our minimum wages up and everything, and like our rent is at a certain level. And, you know, like when people start moving out of houses because they can't afford to live there anymore, things are going to have to change dramatically, especially in metropolitan centers, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, because it's like, you know, we were operating at like that bubble burst, you know, we were like at that level, it was like humming, and now it's all fucked. So we need to like recalibrate our economy right now, and we need to drop the prices for people, drop rent. I hate to say it, but drop wages, because small business is not going to, we can't rehire everybody at $20 an hour. Mm-hmm. Like, we're just not going to have the overhead to be able to allow that, or the revenue. You know, I think that and landlords like are going to be the last ones to feel it, because we're just going to like get screwed. And then it's like 3 months down the road, they're like, oh man, like I am not getting rent. Well, what am I going to do? I have to drop the rent. So it's like, yeah, I don't have answers, but I know that it's going to be a really interesting playing field coming up here.
So I don't want to keep you too long, because I know you're super busy with everything, but I really want to get in touch. One last piece of advice from you about a young restaurateur, first restaurant, getting hit really hard. What piece of advice on a business, a mental, a personal level can you give them? Because again, like a lot of them, they won't ask for help. It'll be a very like personal battle, maybe with a partner or a significant other, but it was going to be a very hard personal battle without asking for help. I know when I first opened my restaurant, I didn't ask. No one knew what I was going through, because I had to keep a brave face for my staff. So what piece of advice would you give to a young restaurateur who's first restaurants just shut a couple of months after they opened, and they're in a really dark place that they can't really see any light coming from?
I would say number one, reach out. I would always have a conversation with you. Reach out to anybody, and just anybody you feel emotionally safe enough with to be able to just hear you. And, you know, if you can't get any kind of sort of like professional help, like call somebody that you know is there for you. And I know for myself, like emotional release, anger, crying, sadness, scare, fear, somebody that you can really unleash all of your emotions to, and just have like a mental rant of everything that is overwhelming you right now, and know that you're not alone. We are, you know, there is, I don't know how many restaurants, I'm going to say 20 to 30,000 restaurants across the country in this. And, you know, that there's 700,000 people in the same boat as you right now that are all not sure of the next move, what's going to happen. So talk about it. Don't put on a brave face and say you got this, because none of us do. And just.
Oh, I lost him. Let me see if I can get him back. I lost you for 2 seconds.
I know my phone just cut out there. But yeah, just say don't you know, just reach out to your community, try to get involved with some people. Community is so important now, whether it's Zoom meetings, if anybody's listening and they want to talk, like, you know, I'm more than willing to jump on the phone with you for half an hour and just, shoot the shit, because that's what we're here for, and we need to be here for each other.
And that goes the same for me. Anyone watching who feels like they need to, just hit me up, DM me, slide in my DM. But Trevor, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure, because I look up to a lot of people in the industry like yourself, and when I have the opportunity to sit down and like chat and like get to the bottom of it, you've from afar, you've always helped me sort of on the mental health and just the industry side of things. So I really appreciate it, and thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, man. You
Thanks, buddy. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.